Hey everybody, welcome back to The Strange and Departed, a video podcast where we'll discuss everything haunted attraction related with your hosts Dustin Ring, Jim Strange, and I am Travis Ring. It's a little bit of a somber moment, unfortunately. It's March 21st at the time of this recording. We would have been in Transworld, hanging out with all you people, getting inspired, going through the trade show floor, watching some awesome seminars and things like that, but here we are, all bunkered up in our homes and trying to wait out this coronavirus craziness. So I do want to give a shout out to Transworld. They are offering a full refund, or you could transfer the ticket to next year, which is incredible. They didn't have to do the full refund part. Also, if you do decide to go that route, I do suggest taking into consideration that they are a business and they do depend on us for future events and things like that, so that we can go to Transworld and hang out with each other. So also want to give a shout out to the vendors. I mean, they're hurt obviously pretty bad during this whole entire situation. So, you know, you can go on Haunters Hangout, look up some of the awesome stuff that they've come out with the 2020 line. And you could go on YouTube and do some booth tours and things like that. And it's pretty amazing. They got some pretty cool stuff this year. We were going to do our own virtual tour, kind of like acting like we're going through Transworld this episode. But because not all the vendors had come out with any videos of new releases like Ghost Ride and stuff like that, we decided to wait a couple of weeks and wait for their booth tours to come out so that we could do our own. Also, so today's topic is going to be the importance of maintaining a theme and how to get inspiration. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And so let us know what you want us to talk about in future episodes. And let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So yeah, since we can't be at the seminars in St. Louis, we'll talk about some things that we may have heard with some of the seminars. But before we get into it, Jim, how have you been, man? How are you doing with this outbreak?
Man, hey, still working, man. Still plugging away. So, not bad. You know, it's just life hasn't changed too much. I mean, outside of work, you know, I'm all stocked up and ready to go. So, just kind of pissed off we're not in Transworld right now. I should be outside the Marriott drinking a beer.
Dude, right? It pisses me off so much. Dustin, how you doing?
Good, man. How about you?
Well, I'm isolated for the last 6 days now, since President Trump has imposed the isolation rule and stuff like that. And he's still making it so that like states get to make up their mind on isolation.
Yeah, right. Individual governors can make their own.
The point is,
ideas.
I'm getting a little bit feral here because I've stopped showering, and I still brush my teeth.
That's
okay,
good.
Though.
That's good.
Well, you should keep showering, man. What if they shut the water off? You know,
if they shut the water off, yeah, you might be right. So I don't know what to do. But
I'm nothing really honestly has changed in my day to day. I feel bad for the people that have had an issue. But yeah, we're still producing stuff. We had 2 silicone pools that we took out of a mold, and we're painting and being inspired, and that's like kind of what we wanted to talk about on this episode was how do you keep that inspiration moving in times like this where
Definitely.
I mean you could easily go on fucking CNN and be bummed out, and that's not inspiring. And so we kind of want to have this episode to say hey, go check out this and this, or different ways that we get inspired and ways that we've learned to kind of push that creativity.
For sure. And we are going to talk about that a little bit later. We are going to talk about inspiration. But first, before we do that, we are going to talk about the importance of maintaining a theme throughout the haunt, as we would have probably heard a million times during some of the seminars there at Transworld, which I personally think is it's a very important thing for us to take into consideration, because I mean, think about movies, right? If you're watching a movie and you're jumping between different themes and different styles, you're obviously going to turn it off. Much like a lot of the haunted houses that I've been through, which I'm not going to downplay a lot of them, but some of them you walk through and you jump between zombie land, and then all of a sudden you're in clown world, and then all of a sudden you're, there's this lady in a wheelchair attached to a chain, and like you don't know what's going on. They do good at like scaring people, but not necessarily good at the maintaining a immersive environment for the theme that they're trying to portray. So I don't know. It leads to confusion. What do you guys think?
I think it definitely leads to definitely confusing if you're going, like you said, going from like a clown to a zombie. If you start off in a Victorian manner, which that's cool, you know what I mean? But like, I think it should be like, it should flow evenly. So you could start like maybe like in a cemetery and then go into the manor, then make it like through the manor into like a cellar. Then it could go into a crypt. Then a crypt. What would be next? Maybe a crypt into a swamp into maybe the swamp goes into like tunnels and a sewer scene. So as long as it flows like that, because then you you're putting different scenes, one after the other. But like I like the idea of a good flow, So
I mean, sometimes like I don't know. For like when we were designing our haunted house, or in some of the best haunted houses that I went to, like in Paducah and Nashville, Nightmare, I don't even do it. Basically, they maintain the same idea. Like you have a premise of something that happened, and it went horribly, horribly wrong. I remember like Ellen Hobbs talking about that a couple of years ago. It's like you have a hospital scene, and the hospital went horribly, horribly wrong. Like you talk about like coronavirus right now, something is out of place, and you're still maintaining the theme of the
of the theme, right? So, and that's the thing is like if you have clear divider between themes, which is what Jim's talking about, but like where you can segue between your storyline into different sets, I think is a rad thing. Separate buildings is one. I went to Hell's Gate by John LaFlamboy, and he had you had like your outdoor haunt where you walk around on the trail, but then you're going on this trail. And then you see like their main facade. And it's absolutely beautiful. Highly recommend going to Hell's Gate. And it was so cool because like as you got in there, you waited again, but there was clear separation between the two, and it made sense. Everything made sense on that haunt.
I think what happens sometimes too is like people like if it's your first time making a haunt, or maybe not your first time, but you actually have the opportunity now to do something on a larger scale. You've had 10,000 ideas for well over 10, 20 years. So it's kind of like you have the opportunity now to, maybe the money, maybe the means, maybe the building to like do this big thing. And I think sometimes people get over, how much want to say, like over exaggerated.
They want to put every different theme in one area.
Right. It's like you guys, we have an opportunity to do everything we've ever wanted to do. Let's do it. And it's like, yeah, but do it. But you kind of have to tap the brakes somewhere. Like save some ideas for next year and stuff like that too.
So one of the things that I was going to talk about like basically if you only have one building and people are walking through and you want to portray all of those ideas like you're talking about, Jim, you want to go from Zombieland to Clownland to the classic haunted house, whatever it may be, maybe have some sort of like a new queue line to like a facade or something like that where people notice a true break between this is different than this. This is a different attraction.
Depending on the size of the attraction, I've been to some haunted houses like Fright Kingdom in New Hampshire. Highly recommend Fright Kingdom. They have one big giant building, and they advertise 3, 4, 5 haunts, how many haunts they have inside. But that's what it is. When you leave one haunt, dark, blackout. They have like the caves and stuff like that. They have the fun house. But in between each one, you have to go into a separate line, which is a good, like you said, a clear break.
Right.
I mean, what else? Like, and what Dustin said it's perfect too. If you have the space to do it outside, like if you have 10,000 ideas, I'm for it. Like that's awesome. Like do them all, but just break them up. You know what I mean? Like if you have the means to do 3 or 4 different haunts, then people just know,
Right.
like, this is clown. And again, but like Clown Town, or a fun house. I don't want to keep saying Clown Town, but like a fun house. A fun house is supposed to be whimsical. It's supposed to be, mysterious. It's supposed to be like disorienting, if you will. You know what I mean? So I think like in a fun house setting, evil fun house or whatnot, it's not that bad of an idea. If you do, like, you have like a lot of, you can have randomness in a fun house, you know what I mean? But you can't have, like you said, you can't have I love like I'm old school, man. So an old Victorian manor with the wallpaper and the
For sure.
the candles and the fireplaces. I love that, but you couldn't have like a Bozo the Clown running through there coughing blood. It wouldn't fit.
No, you can't, and that's a really good point. We'll talk about that later. With like some actors wanting to have their own costumes, and like you got to place it like they would, like, if you're a director in a movie, for example, you got to place things appropriately so that people are like, I'm going through all of a sudden a certain different area, whatever it may be. But Larry in The Darkness does a really, really good job with at least between the separation of the beginning of the haunt to the clown world, because it does enter into a new queue line. However, I would say before that, I really don't know what the theme is. I'm going to be honest.
Well, I like what he
it's
does.
The darkness.
I'm going to be honest.
It's the
It
darkness.
is.
Yeah, but
it's
you
the
start,
darkness,
you,
and
you start in like the jungle. Remember, you start like the jungle. You have or the woods, if you will. You have like caves. You have waterfalls. You have drawbridges and stuff like that. You have like the voodoo shack in the woods and whatnot, and then you go into the house. Remember, the house starts off like you're in the front yard. You have like a trick-or-treater or two. You have like the garage, and then you go into the house, and there's like so I think he does a good job with the flow of it, and
he does a good job with the flow.
He advertises the like the blacklight attraction too, like the clown stuff as a separate thing. You know what I mean? So like the darkness. And
but I agree with Travis. Like, what is the main theme behind the the attraction? Like, if you think about a movie, like he has aliens in there and like weird shit, and I'm sure he has a great way to talk about. Here's the main storyline. It's the darkness and it's everywhere that's around us. But like at the end of the day, that would be the worst fucking movie ever. You know, like if you watch a movie and all of a sudden there's aliens, a dude that's like. Your soul belongs to the darkness, and then next thing you know, you're seeing people with spikes in them, and then you're seeing an alligator. Like, what kind of fucking movie would that be?
Yeah, but I think a lot of the alien stuff he had. I mean, I don't know what he did this year because we can't go, or not yet, But I remember like a lot of the alien stuff was in Silo X. Remember, Silo X was the first one we went to. It's like and
that was the
stuff.
thing. There was a clear in that he did a really good job with that. There's Silo X. That first, it was a different haunt, and it was all about like zombies. And you were going through. There's a bunch of things that were popping out. It seemed like there was a virus that was spreading, right? And then you went to a different building, and that was, in my opinion, a clear indicator that you were going into a different attraction, which I thought he did very, very good. It's the like original darkness, like when you go into the first place that he created, which is incredible, and I don't want to like downplay that whatsoever. If anything, I would walk through that like
every day.
Every day. Just like look.
I want this. Remember, Dustin?
The incredible art that he like. It's
I want
incredible.
this in my entry to my house.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't know what the story is, and that's the important thing. It really comes down to like a story, and I think that's what most people are attracted to. They want some type of like. Antagonist on mostly haunted houses don't really have a protagonist. Everything just goes to shit, and like you start out and it's getting worse and it's getting worse and it's gonna be even worse at the end. Like there is no.
I think sometimes
remedy.
It could be fine to be different too, because if you think about it, I mean, I totally agree with you, but and sometimes, I mean, a lot of websites have like a story. You read the story before you go to the attraction, and each house has their own story, and I like that. That's like old school. Like I
totally old school.
Old haunted houses when I was a kid, seeing like the story written on like a big tombstone right when you're in the queue line. Like I like that, but also to be different too. Like it's I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. You watch movies like Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. That movie's everywhere.
That had a story.
It had a story, yeah, it did. But
no, it did have a story.
A lot of the imagery was everywhere, though. He had like bits and pieces.
It was everywhere, but it was
cool.
a demented family. It was a demented family that was just fucking sewing people together, and they had Dr. Satan, right?
Yeah.
And fucking, he was doing that was the theme of the movie. Was he had this crazy fucking character that was trying to implement as much pain on people that he possibly could to keep them alive to the brink of existence, torturing them and harming them,
but
and sewing different things on them.
I totally agree.
And he made the family was like part of it. Yeah. So like that was the story, and it makes a lot of sense.
You could have made a movie on like each aspect, though. You can make a movie just about Captain Spaulding, just about Dr. Satan, how Dr. Satan get down there, just the family, like the whole thing. But again, like imagery wise, there's a lot of different stuff, like just like random.
There was a lot, but like, I like that. That's the artistic side of it,
right? And I like that personally. I like the artistic side of things, where it's just like, so even in a haunt, like maybe you could do it as advertise it instead of like a storyline. Say like I think Erebus does it, where it's like you go into a time machine, because like where are you gonna put a mummy scene, like like the mummies and the pharaoh and stuff like that. So you go into a time machine. So he's like, I can put you wherever I want. I don't need a storyline. I could put you here. I could put you there. You're in a time machine. And then I was thinking more of like Nightmare. You know what I mean? Like you're inside your own head or someone else's head. So if you have a nightmare or a dream, there's no set storyline in a dream, dude. It's fucking everywhere, and to me that's terrifying. No, am I saying every haunt should follow that format? No, but I'm just saying it's being different.
But the theme behind that is that it's a nightmare. Like you're in a time machine, and we're going to take you to horrible places.
Right, but if you didn't read that on the website, if you didn't read that at the in the queue line, you're going to think, well, how we're talking right now. You're going to go in there.
So like you can either
everywhere.
read it. You could either read it or have somebody that's very talented, that is explaining the story. A very talented line monster, for example, somebody that's out there with the people and they are talking to the people about what they're about to encounter. And if anything, that is what people are really how they get more immersed into the haunt they're about to go into. And I think it's there's many different ways to do it. You could do it on a gravestone, like you were saying earlier, like here it is, here's the story, blah blah blah. But most people aren't going to read that stuff. It is pretty old school. Like, whatever.
Well, like you said,
but like having somebody explain it to you, and they do that like Disneyland. We've talked about that before at their haunted house.
Well, that's old school too. I like the guy coming out with the lantern saying.
He comes out. There's a story, and then like the floor.
You're about to enter a world of darkness.
Yes, and it's so good.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Actors
maybe
make it too. Actors, I mean, without the actors,
they are 90% of the show.
Right, and I'm sure 90% of people aren't going to read. People don't want to read. They want to go have fun on a Saturday night. You know what I mean? So the actors are definitely going to bring
the
essence of the haunt for sure.
I feel like and we could keep on going on this forever, but like, don't you feel like it's a bitch ass move to be like, oh, here's my storyline. It involves everything, like you were saying, Jim. Is like if you go like, oh, it's a nightmare, or we can make this storyline to be some type of time machine. To me, like that's just like, oh, we bought all these cool props, and now we have to make some story around it. Whereas, like on the opposite side, if you're creating the story and then buying the props or making your own, that's the way it should be. Personally,
absolutely.
I want a really good story, or at least consistency between haunts. Because like I mean, like, and then like devil's advocate for that is like, there's people that are afraid of clowns. There's people that are afraid of people with like chainsaws. And so like devil's advocate approach it would be that they're trying to get scares for everybody. And at the end of the day, like that's all that matters is like people got out there and they go, oh my God, that clown was scary. Well, you know what I thought was scary was the guy in acid. Well, I thought the dude killing somebody was scary. And so it hits all those like points. Whereas like, if I like, because I don't like clown ones, like I hate them.
Well, I don't like bright clown ones. How to explain that one? Like, I don't like the old school.
I don't understand
polka dots on the wall and stuff. I like old, like if you do the old carnival, the dun 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 dun, and the rotten teeth, and like I don't know how to explain, like an old school carnival. I like that.
Yeah.
But like what you said, I don't like the friggin' quick paint. I don't like it. I personally don't like that part, you know. But
or the 3D glasses.
I think it can be done, and it can be
everybody
done really
is
creepy.
Everybody is doing the 3D glasses thing, and I really don't understand. I've actually never been afraid of clowns. And the movie It is like one of my favorite movies, and It 2, by the way, fucking amazing visuals. But like I've never been afraid of clowns. I really don't understand it. But
maybe when I was a little kid, but like now I love it, man. I got old oil clown paintings and stuff. Like I love it.
Yeah.
I like
it's a fun psychosis.
Like it's not supposed to be scary, but I remember being a kid staring at it, being terrified.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know. Inspiration. We've kind of delve into this a little bit, but obviously, where do you get inspiration from? I know obviously one of the main things is horror movies. Stephen King is probably one of the main proponents. I love the old like Technicolor thing, like even some of the black and white films and things like that. Nowadays, it doesn't seem as creepy to me. Whenever you have like CGI and things like that, it did a good job with Stephen King, but I feel like a lot of times they are a little bit lacking in the kind of mystery, if that makes sense.
Well, I think with it too, they brought back like old school like makeup effects techniques and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
they did. That's probably why it was
CGI
so good.
at the big when he got to be at the big giant it at the end. Obviously, that's going to be. Am I trying like CGI and stuff like that?
CG.
But I love like old like puppetry, and I love Pumpkinhead and Alien. Excuse me. I mean, you think of like what am I trying to say? Like Legend with Tim Curry, man. Like that was all makeup. Like when he's the devil, that's all makeup effects. Like it's just like,
dude, it's so
I love that.
good.
And I like how a lot of places. Yeah. But it's a lot. It costs a lot of money too. Like you have to hire people for sculpting, casting, painting, all this stuff. So it's as a production company, a lot of places will go the cheaper route. And I'm not saying like CGI artists that shouldn't be paid. They do a phenomenal job a lot of the times.
They do.
But you can pay like a team of CGI artists to sit in front of a computer. You'd have to pay a much bigger team if you want to get like Stan Winston Studios or someone to come in. It's a much larger of a team. Everyone needs to get paid. But I think the end result, it has like that, like a classic. Like I've been watching like 80s, like slasher film, all the monster stuff from the 80s, man. It's just I love.
There's something about it. There's something about that.
The practical
It's unsettling.
effects.
It's unsettling. Like
it is
being a
unsettling.
kid watching. When I was a kid watching Labyrinth, I mean that was all Jim Henson. That was all most of it was puppets. It was people in costumes or puppets. But I remember being a kid being freaked out. I'm like, I don't know what. I don't think it's supposed to be scary, but something about these puppets are freaking me the fuck out. And I love that.
It's like a creep factor, because there is something about like something that looks familiar, but is so off-putting at the same time. Like if it has like cute eyes or it like resembles a human or an animal, something that you would like to like go up to and like hold or something like that. And at the same time, there's something very, very creepy about that interaction. I think that is a lot of fear.
Not everybody knows what we know.
It's a creep factor.
Right, but you think if you're a child, especially if you're a child, but even an adult now, not everybody knows about puppetry, not everybody knows about makeup effects, not everybody knows how certain effects are achieved, So when you see something like a person in a costume, if you don't know it's a person in a costume, it could be like just something wrong, just like you're looking at it like
right.
When someone doesn't have eyebrows or something like that, you just like something's
exactly
there's up with that person's face, but I can't put my finger on it.
I can't. But they're looking at me and they have like cute eyes and they want to like, hey, come here. I want to hold you and I want to coddle you. and I don't know. It's something very strange.
Would you fuck me? I'd fuck you.
Yes, I would fuck you, Jim.
I'd fuck you so hard. It puts the hand sanitizer on the skin.
Good title for this episode.
Yeah.
It does. Good. Well,
I totally agree, though. Like, I think, like, horror movies exemplify, like, everything that, like, we do, right? So, like, I think most people get lots of inspiration from horror movies. And then there's also places that, like, are the real haunted places that also, when you think about, like, most horror movies got inspiration from those places that, you know, like, are real, true stories. And I think that's really interesting.
what is that? That's is the 37th parallel, or whatever they call it, right? The latitude line of 37 degrees north. For some strange reason, there is a ton of places that people have reported paranormal activity, and it's interesting. One of them we based our haunt off of in Reno, and that is based off of Waverly Hills, a tuberculosis outbreak. I can't believe I'm saying outbreak right now because it's coronavirus, but it's a tuberculosis outbreak facility, and they weren't able to contain the amount of contamination, and people died. There was lots of people died, and they created caverns below the facility to expose or dispose of the bodies into a giant grave pit. But I'm talking a little bit too much about that. But there's a lot of things within the 37th parallel. I don't know.
I'm gonna go take some acid, you guys. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go take some acid, you guys. I'm gonna go take some acid, you guys. I'll be right back. Take some acid. Take some acid, you guys. I'll be right back. Take some acid, you guys. I'll be right back.
It's weird. It's crazy shit. Like,
no, I love it.
Like, why is it?
Yep.
It's a very conspiracy theory. Like, maybe it's just coincidental, you know?
It may be
coincidental. I think I
coincidental.
love that shit, man.
But that's what also people gravitate towards. And, you know, if you're going to gain inspiration for a haunt, you might as well make it as real as reality, because reality is probably
right. But
go ahead.
Yeah, dude, I totally agree. And if you really think about it, every town or every city, they have their folklore. They have like that cemetery. They have that mental institution. They have that warehouse. They have that. I mean, maybe not every single one, not every single town across America, but a lot of towns have like that folklore. You know what I mean? We have an old cemetery called Spider Gates. It's a couple towns away, and it's in the middle of the woods. It's hard to find, but I know where it is. But it was supposed to be like the 7 circles of hell, you know, and the deeper you go in, there's like 7 cemeteries and stuff. Now, I've been there, and there's one big cemetery in the front. There actually is big wrought iron gates that have like,
that's cool.
It's like spider webs on them. I'll post a picture, but it's only that one cemetery. Now, I've gone for walks in the woods beyond the gates, but and there are clear spots in the woods, like a grassy knoll or a grassy spot where tombstones might have been, but I didn't see any tombstones. I've taken the walk, and I haven't seen the 7 circles of hell.
You know what?
But but going back to what you said though, like there's an old mental institution in Rutland when I was a kid, and everybody would go there. There's the old prison camps in Rutland, which is near a couple towns over from where I live right now.
That's cool.
So when we were kids, you know, I mean, again, when you're a kid, you're thinking more just like, you know, drinking beers and smoking bud and whatever. It's more in a party sense. But looking back, it's like, dude, people like died here, and it's got that creep factor, you know. So
it's got that creep factor. So like, it's funny. I used to hang out with my mom. We didn't know what to do. We were a little bit poor. There wasn't very many things that we had, and a lot of times we would go and hang out at the cemetery, which is weird because it was my request.
I love the cemetery,
dude. Right? And one place in particular was Potter's Field, and I was so fascinated by that as a kid. And it was basically the place that you bury people that didn't have an identity. There was maybe a limb blown off in some explosion, or maybe somebody died, whatever it may be. And it was super curious to me. It was like there's this mystery behind it, and that was so scary. But I still liked it, and I wanted to recreate it in a haunt scene, to like share that experience with other people. I love that so much. I don't know what it is about that drive, but that's definitely where I was able to conjure probably a lot of ideas.
Well, when I was in high school,
it's inspirational, right? So like if you think about like what we're talking about on this, is that like you going to that cemetery is inspirational to create different scenes that we've created throughout the years. The last episode we talked about like you can go on Pinterest and stuff like that, but like I feel like the second that you try to imitate and copy somebody's work, which definitely check out episode 3 last time, because you don't want, like, inspiration is not about copying somebody's idea. It's about being inspired. So Travis is talking about being in the cemetery, and so like taking pictures of real life stuff, and like maybe like taking ideas and like having like that freedom of being like opening your mind to being able to be able to say like, yeah, I want to have this like creepy cemetery that's like Potter's Field. Is that is inspiration.
Yeah, it is.
Right, when I was in high school, before I had my car, there was nothing around my high school. There was like a restaurant across the street, and there was a cemetery down the road. So like when you're in high school and if you're skipping class, or you have study long block or study last period, I would go to the cemetery, and there's 2 parts to the cemetery. And most cemeteries have this, not all of them. But there's the newer part, the newer gravestones, more up to date and stuff like that. And in the center of it, there was like this old section of just like tombstones from the 1700s and the 1800s, and like I remember sitting there and like not even like inspired to make a cemetery in my own yard, which I did. But it's also like it's peaceful in a cemetery, and I was getting ideas. Like some people would be like, "Oh, that's morbid, just sitting in the cemetery." I'm like, never looked at it like that. Like I would just sit there and listen to music or whatever the fuck. But I really took a lot of ideas, like old mausoleums, old cemetery fences, and just the way the trees. Like you think, if you go to a plot in a cemetery and the gravestones are from the 1800s, they didn't randomly just plant a tree right there recently. Most likely that tree, that creepy, viney, falling apart tree, was probably been there since the 1800s, probably before that. So like that whole section of cemetery, I just remember when you were talking about the cemetery, that's the image that just popped right fresh in my brain.
Yeah, and some of that root is actually like digging into the
the graves,
and that makes a little bit more of a mystery, which I think is a huge part of horror in general. But
well, I think like, so like if you look at like cemeteries, right, Travis, like those people were inspired, or not cemeteries per se, but the people that like make video games look at horror movies, which is what we were just talking about, and then you look at cemeteries and things like that. So like you can take inspiration from places or from things like video games. One of the things that like Travis and I loved to death as kids was Mortal Kombat, and we'd go to the arcade and play it all the time. And they had like one of the fatalities was where you like uppercut Sub-Zero or Scorpion or whatever, and they would fall into this like spike pit. And so like whenever I saw like Unit 70 had like like the guy on the spike, like obviously like that's probably not where they got their inspiration. Maybe it is, but at the same time, like if you look at like video games like that and you're like, oh, that's a cool thing, maybe I should make some type of prop that like has a guy on a spike. And I got the Unit 70 guy playing right now. Like that thing is awesome.
We used to hang out at the arcade all the time, and there was one time we were at one of the grocery stores that had it's like kind of a mini arcade, and I remember having a very morbid thing happen. We were playing Mortal Kombat, I want to say 3, and the mailman fainted on one of these giant what is it called? It was like a ventilation system. I don't know if you remember this from like the early 90s, late 90s.
Yeah, it was horrible.
It was a ventilation system when you were walking into the grocery store, and the mailman fainted, and there was this lady. She's like, call 911, call 911. And I turned around, and there was this dude that just had his head like broken open. No blood
shit.
Pouring into the fucking, the ventilation system. I remember that very vividly, and I remember the smell, and I think that's a kind of a important part. I don't know why, but
It's
it was
the
fucked
reality.
up. It was fucked up. So the reality.
Like if you think about like inspiration on that, like I'm sure like, which is weird because I haven't thought about this story in a while, but I'm sure will create something that is based off of that because it definitely stuck in your mind.
It's stuck in the fan noise. It's a real person dying too, and that's not. I mean, this whole industry is based off of like real reality, but that was something that was very inspirational to me for sure. I don't think that I intended
as horrible as that is. Yeah,
exactly as horrible as it is. But
you can go back in your mind and
like I can
what
go back.
affected me.
Yeah, and the smell. Anyway, so
but it could be something happy, like Alan Hops. I forget, maybe it was last year or 2 years ago. But he talked about like look at like, so you have video games, right? Horrible ones like Mortal Kombat. But then you can also look at like things like Dungeons and Dragons. Like there's so many cool characters in there, and so don't rip it, but make it yourself. Be like, I really like that character, and I'll
video
make it
games,
my own.
I've got so much, especially like the textures that they have on some of the walls and stuff, like Red Dead Redemption 2. God, some of the old Western kind of feel and the decay of the wood on some of the buildings is pretty inspirational, and some of the stories and even just like the textures of some of the dead bodies is pretty incredible. That's a huge I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but it's a huge fucking contribution to my inspiration whenever it comes to designing sets. Yeah.
I'm waiting for Jim to hop in, but
Jim is not.
like
hey, I'm trying not to interrupt you.
It's
I like you
I'm
interrupting, so fuck it, fuck that. You should always interrupt us, because I like if I feel like
like you said
talking,
about. Well, what you said about like ripping, don't rip it, like that. But you have a good basis, like you said, like Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of video games, like even like Mario and stuff like that. You're in a castle, so boom, right off the bat, you have a good setting, a good base castle. You know what I mean? Whether it be from Nethercraft, whether you have castle walls, But then so you already have that, but then have like the inside be your own. Have whatever like the theme, whatever the grotesque, whatever you're gonna have inside to be the scare. You can make that your own, So, like you said, that's part of drawing inspiration. Drawing inspiration should be you seeing something and then it resonating in your brain and then coming out different, not just like something going in your brain and coming out the same way, So,
yeah.
And we all see that, like everything. I mean, everything to me is like stunning and cohesive. So, like, whenever I see not everything, but like for instance, like this right here, this tile, like we obviously saw that somewhere else. We didn't copy it exactly. We had different stains. We created our own way to make it. And so like I think if you're taking, like in our last episode, if you're taking and making it the exact same cracks and all that, that's wrong. But like being inspired is seeing something, having it in your brain, and then making it like your own, and that's really cool. Like I love it. Like Travis, you were saying, like in Red Dead Redemption 2, like yes, their textures are amazing. They definitely were inspired, maybe by haunted houses or maybe by like different horror movies or actual pictures. But like I think like anywhere you go, the second that you feel, that it's a great feeling that we get as humans, and everybody gets inspired. And it's the difference between like some artists feel like, oh, I can't fucking think about anything. I don't know what I'm going to do. And that's where inspiration comes. It's like, it's a great exercise for humans to do is, yes, go on Pinterest, go on Haunter's Hangout, go to Transworld, go look at these things because you will be inspired. Like that is what.
Well, you have to surround yourself
do.
too. You have to surround yourself with stuff that you love. You know what I mean? Like, I keep like Facebook, for instance. I keep Facebook, like a lot of artists. I follow a lot of artists on Facebook, but that's more of like the friends and the family are on there. My Instagram, however, I keep my Instagram primarily artists. So, because as you like photos and as you are sharing photos, blah, 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 the more stuff you go into like a formula. You know what I mean? So the stuff coming into my feed is all artists, man. Tattoo artists, makeup artists, Halloween stuff, sculptors, all the way through. You know what I mean? Like, and that's but that's what I immerse myself in. You know, like if you look at my office, if you will, it's all from floor to ceiling. I cover stuff with like pictures of stuff that I love. You know, so same thing. Going to Transworld, like you said, you gotta immerse yourself. You gotta surround your stuff in stuff that's going to make you happy and inspired, if you will. You know, so you can't just like sit in a white box and be like, oh yeah, I got an idea. You know, like I'll be reading a book or something, and like just I got this idea. Or like you said, watching a movie. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I'd be watching a horror movie, and then it was more when I got a little bit older, like middle school, high school. I started like taking that idea and like, you know, what would I do in that situation? How could I make that into like a haunted attraction? If I was to make a movie, what would I do? You know, I started to get that mindset. I went to school for like electronic media as well, like. It was like more for television, but like movie production and directing and stuff. So there was a good chunk of time where I couldn't even watch a movie without like thinking about how they edited that, how they lit that, how they made the movie. You know, but it's a cool way to watch a movie too. Like,
but it's all based off of like past experience, and that's probably the
going back to it. I'm sorry, but like,
inspiration.
Going back to what you said about like watching The Mailman, you know, that was actually that's something that definitely stuck in your brain. You know, I remember going to a funeral when I was like, really young. Like I don't know if I was too young to be going to a funeral or not, but like now, like I have a hearse, man. I drive a hearse as my play car. I have a coffin in my family.
I'm fucking jealous.
I have a casket in my living room, but like but I was interested in like I have like old embalming bottles and like funeral instruments and whatnot. I have a real casket for the hearse. I have books I bought off a mortician of like embalming, anatomy, physiology, funeral, like just funeral sciences and stuff like that. No, could that be because I went to a funeral really young and something permeated in my brain? Maybe, if you know, but like I don't look at it as like dark and morbid. Some people might, you know, but I think it's just death is a part of life, and to me, it's, you know.
I love where you're going with that, because like one of my earliest memories of like the first funeral I ever went to is our Uncle Ted, and my dad literally grabbed my hand and pulled me up to it, which is a horrible thing that you should ever do to a kid.
You need to see him. And he's like,
you need to touch him. You need to see him. And that stuck in my head, and the smell of flowers, like even to this day, whenever Valentine's Day rolls around and I buy flowers for my girlfriend,
you think of your dead uncle? That's fucking,
that's dude, nuts, and that's like so like that smell. And like so when we had a haunted house that was like traditional haunted house back in the day, and we got tons of smells that had that floral, like the rose smell, you know, and like it's creepy.
This year in my haunted house, I did the like the crypt, like the mausoleum. So it started off like you're going into a mausoleum, and we'll show you some video footage. But like we had the mausoleum, but it started off like I have that real casket. I took it out of it's real steel. It's 20 gauge steel, and we had to lift it out of the hearse, bring it down into like the basement. But anyway, that's a real coffin, and I made an old lady in there and stuff like that. But like I'm like, you're in a crypt. We have to have like this is the old lady, my grandmother that died. She has to go into the vault next, you know. I don't know, but a lot of imagery, there. Like the candle holder. That's in every, you know, crypt. I have family that's not just buried in the ground. I have family that's buried in like a vault. You know what I mean? Like a big building with all the.
Oh, that's cool.
Like all the.
Do you have any Easter eggs or anything like that with that?
What, Easter eggs in the vault?
Yeah, like your family, you know, like just like, oh, this is my aunt. This is my. No, not at all.
No.
I love Easter eggs. That's one of my favorite things.
I think you have to explain Easter eggs, Travis, because I don't think he doesn't understand.
So certain things like you put in people that have died in your haunt, or you know, things that you want to that only the people that built the haunt understand.
Okay, yeah, right.
If that makes sense. So,
okay, yeah. I've seen that. Yeah. I've been to haunted houses before where I knew the owner and something like that, and you'd see like his name on like a tombstone or something.
Something like that.
Distortions did it too. I think they have a tombstone that says Ed Edmonds.
It does.
And then it pops out, and it's a zombie with like the beard and the hair. You know.
I love that.
But yeah, I like the.
How do you guys feel?
Too.
How do you guys feel like? Because like one of the things what we do and like when we're sculpting, we have a book that's a special effects guide of real human wounds and injuries, and it's basically a special effects of different real human injuries. And so for us, like I'm like I disassociate it from like real life. One thing that Alan Hops, I think it was Travis, that said that
I don't know who
he
it was,
looks at, you know, like it resonated with him so much that like seeing these human bodies that are horribly just grotesque and disfigured, whatever it is a bad way. So he said it could not be Alan Hobbs, but like instead of looking at like these real death scenes, you know, like I watched Faces of Death as a kid, and
yeah, me too.
Fucked up show.
That was like the most fucked up movie I could ever think of.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, and so we definitely take that, and so like you could either let me just end this with like instead of looking at these like real life injuries, you can look at stuff like rotten fruit. You know, like you can look at things that like still decay and make that like gross. Like if you're gonna take inspiration, you can take it from rotten fruit.
Right,
rotting
like,
peaches.
Going back to what I said,
pumpkins,
though, it's like that's part of that's what looking at a dead body is part of real life. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want personally. I mean, I understand if it makes you sick, don't look at it. But like, I want to see it. Like, not to be gross about it. You know what I mean? But like, that's part of real life. You're going to die. Everyone you know is going to die. And like people have. I don't want to be like oblivious to the fact that people have been horribly mutilated by other people, by bombs, by whatever, you know, a bolt going through their friggin' head. It's real. That's real shit. You know what I mean? And if you're gonna recreate a prop, you know what I mean, the face has been brutally burned, you're gonna have to look up burn victims to get the right texture and feel of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, some people might have a weaker stomach than others when it comes to, I know this is fake blood and I know this is latex, but like I like to look at like an old anatomy book, like, especially with sculpting. You know what I mean? Like you have to see facial structure. You have to see why that bone wouldn't be there. I've seen makeup effects done before, like on hands, and I'm like that bone is completely out of place. No, I'm not gonna be picky about it, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's important to see real injuries, real dead bodies.
Absolutely real. And I mean, there's got to be a point though. You're sticking yourself in a weird little studio where you just have a clay mold in front of you, and you know you're molding and you're looking at dead bodies all day, every day, 7 days a week, whatever it may be, and it gets a little bit traumatic. But rotting fruit definitely will. It's one of those things that you can look at that is very similar to how our own skin rots.
True.
And burns and things like that. If you get a blowtorch to it, whatever it may be, and it does a good job of representing what you were trying to recreate in terms of the texture. Come on, if you constantly look at death every day, that shit gets. It really does psychologically get.
Oh yeah, and I'm not talking about like looking at dead bodies online and jacking off or anything.
Every day. Well, I'm not saying jack.
You don't jack off to that.
I like it.
Pornhub doesn't have anything like that for you, Jim.
I like it when they lie still like that. No, but I mean, like in the event of creating like an art piece, you know what I mean? Like
for sure. Well, that's where the inspiration comes from. It's definitely from real life, like lore, you know.
Totally, but like I think like most people do not want to see that stuff. Like, I mean, like the first time I got that book, I was like, holy! And like I have a link to it. Or I have the images up. It's on Amazon. It's a rad book. Yeah, like the first time I looked at it, I was kind of like, ugh. But now, like, I'm totally 100% desensitized to things like that. Like, it does not affect me because we're surrounded by it all the time. It probably could affect me later on, like when like people that we love, like Travis, if you died or my mom died or something like that, like, yeah, that shit will like definitely affect us because we have life casts of Travis. Like, I have a life cast of your head. If I am,
you
like,
better keep my head, you
carving
fucking son of a
into
bitch.
your head.
I want your face on my wall.
I want you to want my face on your wall.
Yeah, while we're talking about stuff like that, this is a good book, you guys. I'm not here to sell anybody. This book's called Body in Question, and I bought this book a long time. It's all about like forensic science and whatnot, but it's got a lot of pictures of like, you know, people.
Oh, people in
people
so
ripped
certain,
open. It's got guys, you know, covered in, real bodies covered in maggots. You know what I mean? Like, again, like it's a good book.
Well,
I've
and
definitely
they
used
have
this
like
for
body
inspiration.
farms. They have body
That's right.
farms too, right? Body farms, like
Right, but and then a good book for
so
everybody.
like they
Get a human
the
anatomy book.
Absolutely,
I'm telling you, like I have multiple human anatomy books. If I see them at like a flea market or something, I just buy them because I got some old leather bound ones and stuff too. It just looks cool on my bookshelf, but also it's
which is the worst.
Yeah.
I am definitely a fan. Like,
yeah, my grandma does. My grandma won't ask me to borrow books.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it's good to have visual reference, in my opinion. You know.
yeah.
Because a lot of
It
the body
is.
forms, I mean, you can just go, like, again, you can go online and get a picture. You know what I mean? I'm old school. I like to actually pick up an actual book and read it and smell it and stuff like that.
And that's the thing, like, I would never, like, I do have a Pinterest account. I love it. And I think there's ways to collect, and there's definitely, like, you can go on Pinterest and you can collect stuff off different sites, grab them and put them in your own album to be, like, kind of, like, get inspiration for a certain theme. Again, Alan Hops does that all the time, and he like sends it out to his people and says, this is what I'm kind of thinking. I think that's awesome. Like, definitely like a great way. But if you're just going on Pinterest and coming up with your own, like coming up with other people's ideas and copying it bad, that's not inspiration.
Right. Well, I just got an idea, like, while you were talking about that, like, I mean, you can market it, or you can just do it as a reference tool, you know what I mean, on a Haunter's platform, you know, like, if you zoomed in on a burn or a scrape or a maggots or just like, or a chest cavity, like that, if you zoomed in on it and you just had the picture of like, this is what decaying flesh looks like, okay? You take the face off, you take the body off, now you dehumanize the image. So now people could just be like, you know, okay, that's the look of it. For some people, like me, it doesn't matter, but some people might not be able to look at a dead body, you know, while they're trying to sculpt something. That might be an idea, you guys, you know what I mean? If we had like close-ups of, you know, rotting flesh, different levels of decay, maggots, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then you...
It's like the body farm that I was talking about. Like, there's
yeah, in South America they have them.
Yeah, and they observe how a body... decays throughout time in different conditions.
That's in that
whether
book.
it be like just outdoors in you know, like in the forest, whatever it may be, or like in a bag, underground, you know, 2 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet, whatever it may be. Everybody rots a little bit differently.
Well, it's the elements too. The elements will do like
and the
a
elements.
lot of the
Yeah.
they found like the mummies, like the swamp mummies in like Scotland and stuff like that, because they were buried like, under like swamplands and peat and the moss and everything like that would preserve the bodies in such a way, and that just blows my mind. Like I love
and then the skin just lays off of the bone.
That's all
a little bit
natural.
different.
If you think about it, like the mummies of like Egypt. They were embalmed. Their insides were taken out. They like, spices and whatnot were used inside of the body. So like to find a mummy from Egypt is not uncommon. But to find one that was just like guys up in, you know, Norwegian areas of, well, wherever, like in Ireland or Scotland, whatever, they just died. You know what I mean? They were hunting. They died, and they got their body just got like naturally. I love that idea of natural.
Natural decay, just like the skin falling off the bones,
but being preserved too, man. Being preserved, you know, like a guy that dies in the desert is gonna look a whole lot different than a guy that dies in the swamp, a guy that dies in the Arctic, you know.
Yes, exactly.
I love it because like everything you're saying right now, my brain is taking in, and I'm sure that tonight, whenever I go to bed, I'll still be thinking about like my Uncle Ted and about like embalming dead bodies and all that. And I'm sure that I have a lot of nightmares, and so that is definitely something that is inspirational, right? So
yeah,
well, nightmares in
the
general.
second that you wake up and you're like, oh fuck, I had this worst dream.
When there's some nightmares that are very, very recurrent, I think with most people. One of them being a falling sensation, and that's a pretty common nightmare. But also being chased with your feet kind of stuck in this weird like mud, and you can't escape.
You know what happens? You know what happens to me a lot.
Behind you.
I totally, yeah. I've had all those, dude. You know what happens to me a lot too is like I'll be in a situation, in a dream or a nightmare, and I'll be talking to somebody, and then I'm talking over here, and then I look back, and I'm talking to somebody else, and I look back, and it's someone totally different. It's a wholly different situation, but the feeling I get is like I've been talking to that person all along. Do you ever have that? Where
yeah.
You know,
Totally,
so just say I'm
yeah.
talking to Travis over here, and then I look over and talk to Dustin. Now I'm talking to Santa Claus, but it was like I never stopped talking to Santa Claus. And I look over here, and now he's Satan. Santa, Satan, same letters, same fucking guy. But like, yeah,
I love that. So like to take that a step further, and I'm gonna challenge you on something. Is how would you incorporate that into your own haunts?
The falling part is a little difficult.
Drop floors,
but I would
the drop floors.
Drop floors do that very well.
That always
Because like I like one of the things that Travis, you said, it was being chased and like having your feet stuck in mud, molasses feeling. Like I feel like
everybody's had that.
It was Creative Visions had that, and they were the originators, and we did talk about it last episode. But like they definitely need to get the love on what they do, because they put a lot of R&D into their like putting a rad foam underneath different wood panels, I guess.
Oh, right.
And
it makes you
so
feel
that
squishy,
has,
kind of
yeah,
feel.
that squishy bridge, squishy, all the way that they did it, they deserve the love. And definitely check out Creative Visions, because it's people like them that push
when you're
stuff like that forward.
Basically, when you're walking or even possibly running as a patron across this floor, it almost feels like your steps are less than they would normally be. You would step one. I don't know how to explain it. I think everybody knows what I'm talking
I
about.
think you're explaining it correctly. Is like you feel like it's not a normal step. You don't feel
not a normal
the same.
step.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
You don't feel that like hardness, even though it should be hard, and that's like a eerie feeling, especially if you have it in a black area.
Or a swamp. I was
or
gonna
like
say,
a swamp.
have it in the laser swamp, because if you're going through something but you can look down and see what your feet are, then you don't get scared. But when you can't see your feet, like I've heard it done in like laser swamps. What you're talking about?
Yeah, laser.
And I'm like, that's
definitely.
fucking brilliant. Like. But,
Hey, you're just fucking running through the swamp, and you're possibly running across bodies, like little things that you can't see beneath your waist. Right, whatever it may be, any obstruction, spikes.
I've been to haunted houses too, where they have like blackout haunted houses, and everyone might have different takes on it. But I've been in a couple really good ones where they had stuff on the walls, stuff by your feet. They had a friggin' zapper, dude. I got pissed too. I was like, oh motherfucker,
hey, fuck you.
Yeah, but like. Throughout the whole haunt, they even had real actors in there. So the whole time you're feeling around, and then when you actually so you're just feeling walls, and then when you actually feel an actor, and they're like, "We're not all friggin' faking here." We're like, "Oh my god," So, but that idea of not being able to see what you're touching or what's touching you is definitely, definitely a strong influence.
It's the creepiest type of way to, especially if you can't see it.
Well, I think a lot of haunted houses too. Going back to like themes of haunted houses, like we're talking about nightmares. Like what people mostly have nightmares of are usually like phobias, and I think a lot of haunted houses, cash in on that, like a phobia-based haunted house, arachnophobia, colorophobia, fear of clowns, fear of spiders, fear of falling, fear of whatever. But I think a lot of the fears would permeate. Well, I keep saying permeate. would resonate in your brain if you're that would be that's what your nightmares would be based off of. You know what I mean? So a lot of places have just phobia house. I've seen haunted houses just phobia house, and the whole thing is just like everything that makes you cringe and squirm. Like I don't squirm too easy. But if you put like bugs like right next to my head, we keep talking about Alan Hops too. We're gonna have to get him on here one of these days. But we took the remember last year we took the seminar. It was like 60 scares in 60 seconds, and
So good.
And yeah, it was really good. Alan Hops was one of the speakers, and he talked about a corridor where you have it like the size of a body, and then you make the head space like a triangle, and then so now people can't move their heads back and forth. And then when it's dark, and then once you're going in, if you had like tanks with like real bugs, real tarantulas or maggots or whatever, mealworms or whatnot, you'd be freaked out. I don't care. You'd be the baddest guy in the world if you're walking through the dark and you can't move your head, and then a light comes on and you see just maggots right there. That's great to me. I thought that was beautiful. Like one day I will create that.
I like where you're going with that, because we bought some super worms from Amazon actually, and I'll put the link in the show notes at strangeanddeparted.com. But we bought these like super worms, and I totally got inspired by John LaFlamboy's Hell's Gate, because I did go through an area and they had it had like a way to stop the line and to reorg. Basically, like how can we actually like stop the queue, create a new queue, but like in a very like the best way possible to like not just have everybody keep going, but like they stopped it, and it was like an area where they had all these different animals, and they had super worms there, and I was like, that is so freaking cool. Our inspiration from it came from that, like, okay, cool, we're gonna take some of our sculpts, and so we actually have it right behind me, but you can't like actually tell because there's no super worms in there. I let them off at the river because I felt bad for them, because I'm a human.
They're probably dead.
Live, my friends.
I know. But they did stink too. But like it was definitely cool, because
Travis hasn't showered in a couple of days. You gonna let him go too?
Yeah, so
you want some of my worms? Yeah. Come on, I'll give you some of that.
I'm just kidding.
So these super worms, we put great stuff in it, right? And they started like they turn into beetles, right?
Right.
But they started like digging these caves in our mom's life cast head sculpt
that was
of
beautiful,
silicone.
dude.
But we filled it with great stuff, and they literally eat it. Like,
oh, shit.
Which was so
they
weird to us,
because
we were
they
feeding
eat
it carrots,
the foam,
everything.
they
They
eat
say.
fucking silicone.
You had that video right in the first episode 1.
True, I forgot about that. Yeah,
in the intro,
I'll play it again because it was cool,
awesome.
and like
I
it's
love
so eerie, especially if you put a strobe light on top of the aquarium, and as it's hitting those they're huge. They look like maggots, but they move way fast in a strobe light, and so 100% give my inspiration for that to John LaFlamboy, and our how we took it to the next step was by putting in like our mom's head life gas, so that they're crawling out of her nose and all that, and so I love that, dude. I love it. Wasn't, I mean, like if you look at it, it's not a normal aquarium, which like correct me if I'm wrong, but like John LaFlamboy's in Hell's Gate wasn't, they were just all typical, like aquariums, and so we were like, cool, let's bloody it up. We threw in Pale Night Productions Permablood in there, and so yeah, very interesting fact though that they love great stuff.
I think I'm gonna end this right now.
Well, hold on 1 second. I want to say one more thing.
Unless not. Okay.
I love using the idea of using real like insects, because I don't care who you are, man. You could be the biggest baddest guy in the world. If you see those little earwigs, those little centipede things fly across your basement floor, I always go, ah, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Fucking crawl in your head.
Right. But like I've been to going back to Tim Dunn has Fright Kingdom in New Hampshire. And he has a section, like it was right in the beginning, I think, before you go into like the midway kind of area, where it's all spiders. So he's got like you've seen it done plenty of times, like the floss or the fishing line hanging from the ceiling, and you're like, you're walking through spider webs. But he's got actual spiders, man. He's got like actual fish tanks with tarantulas in them, and like tarantulas, if you don't know, they'll shed their exoskeleton. So he's got all the exoskeletons
it's a beautiful
on
way
shelves.
They do it too.
Yeah, but he's got all the exoskeletons on shelves, and then tanks of that. So you're feeling the cobwebs, and then you see real friggin' real spiders. So it's freaky. No, I was thinking when you what I would like to do, man. Like you were talking about, like, what do they call it? The mealworms. I call it mealworms.
They're super worms. So they're
okay.
bigger.
Right,
but they're beetles. Like they
right.
turn.
But if you
like,
had that visual in somebody's head, okay, so you have that. So put it in one tank, put it in a couple tanks. So as they're walking by, they have to see it. Now it's in their head. Now you had like rice or something fall on their heads. So like, so now you're putting them into like a situation where they, you see something and then you feel something. You know what I mean? Like I love that. Like all my haunted houses have had some kind of sensory. I haven't used bugs yet, so I'm definitely gonna do it in the future. But I've always had like a sensory thing where at least one part of my
like strings or ribbons or things that
or just
the strings are holding.
Right, like we do like a fun house. Like I did some classic stuff. You know what I mean? I did the pool noodles and I did like the strobe light, very slow.
That's cool.
So you have to walk through something. Disorienting. That's cool. I've done the arachnophobia kind of the black hallway, and like people just freak out, man. If you can't see what's
especially if you touch,
and it
like
was
a
floss.
cobweb.
I used floss, man. That's all it was. If you turn the lights on, it's just floss hanging from the ceiling. You can also use fishing line. I just decided to use floss, but people got so freaked out at that because they had no visual perception at all. They feel something touching you. And then I had a loud horn, and I'll show you a picture of that. But I had a loud horn, just like blow them away, like in the darkness. And that got so many scares.
I love it.
The biggest. I have some friends that are big, man. I have some big friggin' like tall, stocky friends that come down, and they have to duck through my haunts. But I had them jumping like little girls in some spots. So.
Good shit. Yeah, I love insects, and like 1,000 live superworms on Amazon is I think $29.
We could support your.
We bought like fucking like 5,000 of them.
You could support your local pet stores too. You know what I mean? Like
true. Yeah, that's a good point.
There's Petco. But there's a couple pet stores around here that I have a python, so I have to go and buy rats anyway. And there's been times where I see like the fish tank full of mealworms, and I'm just like, ooh, that's a picture. Click. But I would want to support them.
You have to be careful too, especially with some snakes, because they're trying to be secretive. That's their entire fucking existence, is to try and be secretive. So like you got to be kind of careful.
Well, snakes are unpredictable too, man. Like
dude. They'll strike at anything, and because they're scared, and you don't want to like overstress the fucking snake,
right? And I've seen it done before. I've seen people bring snakes into their haunt. And
they know the snake handler knows,
right? But it's a different scenario if you are on a stage entertaining people, because now you don't have the snake like right in everyone's face. You're on a stage away from anybody, so if anybody's gonna get bit, it's gonna be you. Now to use it in a haunt, it's too unpredictable. Like I've had 3 pythons. I have one right now, but she's big, man. I've had it for like over 10 years. And she's a good.
What kind of python?
It's a ball python, but they grow like goldfish, man. If you put them in a big tank, I'll post a picture. But if you put them in a big tank, she's big. She's a good sized snake. But like she's nipped at me before when I was trying to feed her. It's not her fault. It was my fault because I was sticking my hand in there. But snakes are unpredictable, and they're cold blooded too, man. So you got to think like, yeah, it can get hot in a haunt, especially toward the end of the night when it's gonna start getting sweaty. But if you're up in New England, man, there's nights it gets cold up here, So and a lot of these places aren't pumping heat, into like old warehouses and stuff like that. So a snake isn't maybe the best thing. Again, unless you're on a stage entertaining people.
Unless you really know it, like Burmese pythons or reticulated pythons, like they're fucking the biggest snakes. Burmese is more manageable.
Right.
Obviously,
Reticulated are bigger pythons.
Dude, they're way too big. That's fucking like they're bigger than the anaconda.
Well, they can be. Yeah, you're right.
They can be. They're like 30 feet long, but like the Burmese python, like they're pretty manageable, or blood pythons are pretty manageable.
10 to 12 feet's the average size in captivity, but they can get up to 20. But like again, like anacondas, even Burmese python can get to be 20 feet out in the wild. You know what I mean? So
right.
But while we're
talking, what kind do you like, Travis? What kind do you have?
I have a ball python as well.
You do?
Okay.
Yeah.
No shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, we should post. We'll post pictures of our ball. I've had mine since I was.
Travis has like a rat right now, and he's like, "I love this rat." I
have a rat right now because I need to feed it, and it's in captivity. Like I'm taking care of the rat, which is
well, that's the thing.
Horrible. Like, it's such a weird like.
I ended up getting my snake to eat frozen. Now I've had her.
I've had mine eat frozen, but it went off feed, and so I fucking started buying live. Because ugh.
up here in New England, the Petco's and PetSmarts and all the big chain stores stopped selling live rats. Someone either got bit or scratched or whatever the fuck, and they got sick. So I couldn't get them for a long time. Now, I had her for over 10 years eating live rats, so I ended up going to a smaller pet store that was selling live, and then I was trying to transition her. Now, I got her on frozen now. You know, I was 19 when I got her, so I've had her for like 13 years, and she wasn't a baby when I got her either, so she's got to be pushing like 15, 16 years old. But she lives like a queen.
Yeah.
I'll show. I'll put.
That's
Awesome. I'll put a picture on mine. I'll put a picture
they're
up.
They're sweethearts.
You put
man.
a picture up too, Travis. So let's both put pictures of our snakes. And then
Yeah, for
Dustin,
sure.
I want to see your penis. No.
You've already
Lay
seen
it down, motherfucker.
Let's see your.
Transworld 2014.
Oh man,
That's good.
Yeah.
I think back to the inspiration thing is like music for me. Travis, you got me in a Skeleton Witch, and like every time that we were like building something, like I like hip hop personally, but like Travis is like big fan of like Skeleton Witch, and so we play that as loud as possible, and it totally makes me
for sure. Well, not only that, I don't know. There's some fucking weird artists out there. Mike Patton, obviously.
Oh yeah, Mr. Bungle.
Mr. Bungle or fan.
You know,
like
Primus.
he also,
A lot of Primus had like the old.
dude,
You know, like used to have like the claymation stuff too. You know.
so good. And when you're making shit, like listening to that atmosphere, whatever it may be, like for example, like going back to Mike Patton, he has a band called Phantomas, which I was never really a fan of until I was listening to it while I was sculpting, and there's a bunch of like medical noises, like scraping noises to make you very, very uncomfortable, and I really enjoyed it because it would draw some inspiration while I was doing the sculpt.
Yeah, I love Mr. Bungle. I love Mr. Bungle all the way back to friggin' being a kid in middle school, just banging my head against the wall.
So good.
But like a lot of times when I'm creating like the haunt or making props, I listen to it might sound cliche, but I listen to a lot of like Misfits and like White Zombie. Like I
love Misfits.
Yeah, but it's just
I've got something to say.
yeah, like, it's fun
I
music.
raped your mother today, and it doesn't matter much to me as long as she's
Yeah,
bred.
like dig up her bones, and like I love Halloween, man.
Come on.
So like even like
So good.
White Zombie and Rob Zombie, they're singing about Halloween stuff. It just got it has like that feel, and it brings me back to like spray painting, monsters in my dad's garage when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And that I remember it's a vivid memory I have is like my dad's garage. I'm obviously living at home and a teenager. The garage door is open. There's no heat in there, but like that smell of like the crisp fall autumn air, and all you can smell is like that air, the smell of cut wood, fresh cut wood, that smell of like spray paint, and like listening to like White Zombie and Misfits, and I'm just like
so good.
I'm like yeah, like,
Something about
and
that.
it brings me right back. Brings you right back. Now I have to say it too, man. I love Tool. Like Tool is definitely one of my favorite bands, and like visually as a band, if you watch like their music videos, like Chet Zar did a lot of the artwork for some of their music videos on Anima, that album. Chet Zar has also been he's a sculptor. He's done the mask at Immortal with the big spiral in the side of the face and the teeth.
Oh yeah, it's super. I love that.
He sculpted that, and he's done.
Shut the fuck up! Really, I did not know that.
Yeah, if you look it up. Anyway, and I wouldn't have known much about Chet Zar unless I knew about Tool. You know what I mean? So Tool, music wise, I love their music, but like visual wise, as a band, it's very artistic, and I've got inspired so many times, like just with listening and watching their videos. But anyway,
Yeah.
Adam Jones, their guitar player, started off at Stan Winston Studios. If you watch Jurassic Park, if you watch the behind the scenes of the first Jurassic Park, he's the skinny guy with the black hair, and he's got a Tool shirt on, but he's sculpting one of the Velociraptors.
No fucking way.
I swear to God, man. When I was younger, I didn't know that. As I got older and I got into like makeup effects and got into like Tom
I didn't know
Savini and
that.
Stan Winston, Dick Smith, I started to learn about all these like makeup artists. It all fell into place, but Chet Zar, if you look up some of his work, he has sculpted for, I forget the other one. I know for Immortal for a fact, but he's sculpted for a couple different mask making companies. But
That's cool because I think like I've been to a few Tool concerts, and like they always like
Oh, good. I thought you were gonna be like, I don't like Tool. I'll be like, what the fuck?
So
man?
I'm about to say that. No offense, I don't like Tool. Like I enjoy their music.
Hey, dude, come on.
You just want to react.
I just said I liked hip hop.
I like some hip hop. I like some hip hop too, man. I like industrial. I like reggae. I love death metal.
Atmosphere,
I love everything.
idea, at Aesop Rock. But like, here's the thing: is like I've been to Mr. Bungle live. Like I definitely get all those things, and I get inspired. And Tool is definitely one of those that I paid attention to all the videos going on in the background the whole time, and like I felt inspired.
Yeah, well, they're definitely
even though it's not what I want to see,
they are visual and they're fucking industrial sound, like fucking Jim was talking about.
And I appreciate myself going to that concert because I loved it. Like at the end of it, I was like, and my buddy Ryan Vandenberg, he's like the biggest fan ever of Tool, and he was like, you have to go just to watch. Like the backdrop and everything.
All right,
so,
cool.
like,
I'm glad we're all on the same page on that one, though.
Yeah.
Yay!
Well, they're fucking. Come on. Well, their bass is fucking Justin
Chancellor, man.
Yeah, dude, he's so good.
Yeah.
It's like
they're all.
That's what makes the band. That's the backbone right there.
Yeah, but if you watch, I'm a drummer. You're a drummer, Travis. If you watch Danny Carey, Danny Carey is phenomenal. But it's just like, again, we're not here to talk about like one specific band, but I'm just saying, like, I've been to Tool shows before. I've been to 2 of them, I believe. And again, like, they don't go like most bands will go front and center, like, hey, look at me. They're off in the shadows, and like Dustin, like you said, they're all about the videos and the visuals. And I'm like, that, man, just that. Like, I love, like, they're putting the art first, and that's huge to me,
It is huge,
but
that's where it comes down to. What is it? Gore? God, why am I drawing a blank on it? They do a lot of visuals. Oh my god, I can't believe
Guar?
Guar.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
thank
Guar,
you.
Guar does a lot of visuals, but they also do a lot of like the makeup effects, and I seen Guar before when they had Sarah Palin come out on a freaking on a thing, and they ripped her guts out, and I was like, I'm home. Like
I'm home. I love it. Like the fucking visuals with the.
It's great. Even like Rob Zombie, man. Like for some people might like him, some people might not, dude. Like that's a good show. He's got like big. Ex Mortis. I don't even know if they're still around. Ex Mortis used to make those big like stock arounds, they called them. So it's like it's a puppet you put on your shoulders, and he's got like these big puppets and robots, and he's got all this. He's got the Phantom Creeps, like the big this robot right here. You know what I mean? He's got all these like big guys, man, and I'm just like, this is fucking just great, and it's just like
so good.
All of his like microphone stands are like skeletons, and I'm like, this is just. I'm a visual guy, man. So then again,
dude, me too.
I could totally listen to Johnny Cash playing his acoustic if he was alive. You know what I mean? But I want to see, like, if I go to a show, I'm gonna go see Rammstein. I got tickets in September.
Oh, Rammstein! If the world, dude, that's like the pyrotechnics that Rammstein has is fucking that's what incredible.
I'm old enough now where I've seen a lot of the shows. I'm not gonna go in the pit anymore. I'm getting too fucking old for that. I like to actually watch the show, drink a beer and stuff like that. Because I think about
fuck it, we're going.
Oh, when I was a kid, dude, I would crowd surf and everything like that. But now it's like if you're in the middle of a crowd and you gotta go pee, it's like, oh, this sucks. But anyway, I'm gonna go see Rammstein. They're definitely like a pyrotechnic. They're a show. And I told my brother,
right?
They're German metal, yeah. But I'm like, I've loved them forever. But it's just like, if I'm going to go to a show, I want to see a show. If I'm going to spend the money and I'm going to drive and I'm going to park and blah, 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 deal with like $10 beers, I want to see a show. You know what I mean? I don't want to be ripped off. So
I really wish that more, for example, like, because we're putting on a show with our haunts, obviously. I want to see more pyrotechnics. I think I talked about this a couple of episodes
episode 1,
ago.
yes.
Yeah, episode 1. But like, I really do want to see, especially like synchronized pyrotechnics that are, based off. You hear the music and the pyrotechnics are going off at the same point, like a MIDI kind of.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree.
Dude, it would be so, like, and I don't see that very often. I don't know if it's because of the expensive fuel, but I'd pay the money, dude. I'd fucking pay
like we talked
plus
about
money, dollars. Because I understand how much.
We
money
talked about
that
the
is.
first one too. Like you have to get sponsored. You have to pay the fire department to be there the whole friggin' time. You'd have to be. You got to be outdoors too, man. Like I mean, I'm sure you can do it inside. Did you ever see the Trans-Siberian Orchestra? There is.
Of course, and they're fucking great too.
I love it. But they're in a stadium, and they have inside, pyrotechnics and stuff like that. But I think if you're gonna do it in a haunt setting, it's better if you have an outdoor haunt, just so you're exposed to the elements. Let the fumes go. Are gonna be outside. It's easier
outside
to contain.
Would be a lot easier,
right? And then
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't see the fire department being like, yeah.
I don't see them necessarily
doing inside stuff.
Endorsing most people at all. Well, even just outside, to gain the masses. You see a bunch of fire, especially like you're driving on the freeway or whatever, and you see fire.
Right.
You're like, what the hell's going on? Oh, it's Halloween. I bet it's a haunted house, and you would love to go and see.
You can do it on top of a facade, or if you're something that's like 20, 30, 40, 50 feet in the air. So it's on top of a facade. It's on top of a sign. It's up away from.
Is that in Boston, or I'm sure that's in like the Massachusetts area.
Spooky World had pyrotechnics. So above one of their haunts, they had like I forgot the name of it. But
so it's a certain height.
Yeah. What? They had like a junkyard haunt, you know what I mean? So they had a bunch of cars and a bunch of stacked up and tires. Like you're going through an old junkyard, and they had like big guys coming around the corner and stuff like that. It was cool, but like the sign, whatever the name of the haunt, junk hell, whatever the fuck it was called, it was like they drilled out the sign and like out of like iron or metal, and they had like a flame, like a torch behind it, and you could feel the heat off of it, but it was like up, it was above your head. It was away from people. You know what I mean? Because if you're putting fire right in front, we could. This could be a topic for a whole other podcast. But like,
yeah, well, so
safety wise, putting fire right in front of somebody.
When I went to Burning Man, for example, they had firemen. They actually had people that are surrounding the man while it burns. For example, like you have to have people that are trained, and I think that's that's going to increase the ticket price.
Oh yeah.
Which is, definitely something to take into consideration if you were going to open up something with fire. But at the same time, it's so good. It's so cool. And I really wish there was more people that utilize that.
Really puts a fire under your ass, you know what I mean? To want that.
For sure.
I think you guys, I think we should wrap up pretty soon, though. We got
a
good solid 2 hours. And I think you're going to have an easy time.
2 hours right now?
Almost. You know what I mean? It's almost 8 o'clock. We started a little after 6.
Fuck, okay.
But I think we did a really good job, you guys. Like, I don't think too much editing is going to be, have to go crazy on this one, Dustin, right? Like, I feel we were pretty solid.
I think it is a solid episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dustin Ring does all of the editing as of now. That will change in the future, but as of now, all that brilliant editing you've been seeing, that's all Dustin. So
all Dustin, and I really do hope that we inspired you. I hope that this gives you some ideas of what you may be doing for your haunt this Halloween. I really do hope that all of you are safe. We're gonna go ahead and end the podcast, and like always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Good old Sharon.
Who's
Sharon? Who's Sharon?
Fuck is Sharon?
Her last name is Subscribe.